You need to stay up out the streets if you can't take the heat. You need to stay up out the streets if you can't take the heat. Cause it get cold like Minnesota. Cold like Minnesota.
We're joined today in Waltham, Massachusetts, the home of Bentley University, with Minnesota native Andy Jones. How you doing today, Andy?
Doing great.
I'm pretty excited about this interview because our staff at This Week in College Hockey became huge fans of your team, and in fact, we kind of got caught on camera watching you guys play against BC in that near first round upset that you had with BC. We're big fans of your program, and thanks for having me here to kind of check out the rink and learn more about you guys' coaching staff and your program.
Certainly appreciate you taking the time to stop by on your visit to Boston. I've heard a lot about the game and people watching from various parts of the country, and was a fun moment for our program. Also interested in telling a little bit more about the story. I think the program has some cool things that we're trying to get out there. So
Yeah, you said in an interview when you got hired here about habits. And that's not a word you hear. You hear about systems a lot, but you don't know about habits. I would love to dig a little bit into that maybe later if you want to talk about what do habits mean. I coach a little hockey in my day too, and I love that word because you have to have those habits,
Sure.
or you can't even have a system without habits, correct?
yeah, it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation, right? I
Right.
think, if any of our guys are watching, they'd probably be laughing if one of the first questions was about systems, because they know my disdain for them. And how I think systems in hockey are important because they provide structure. But in general, it takes credit away from the players, in my opinion. And I believe that players are the ones on the ice making the decisions, and they deserve all the credit. I think, referencing your point, I think habits and details trump systems all the time. You cannot have an effective system if your habits and your details are not sound. And so we don't talk about our system. We talk about our effort and making sure that our habits and details are on point on a regular basis, so that we can be difficult to play against.
All right, so now I need to know. I need to take this another layer in before we get to know who Andy is. What is a good habit? What's one of those habits, and what's one of those details that you feel like every Tuesday morning or that practice after the weekend where you might go over film and talk about a
Sure.
habit or talk about a detail?
Yeah, I can go in a few different directions with that question, but it's going to be boring.
I don't.
We tend.
I don't care.
I enjoy.
I'm here to learn. Hopefully our
Yeah,
listeners will too.
Some of this. I enjoy the mundane. I enjoy the boring, and I think habits are stopping at the net, stopping on the puck.
Is there a drill that you can put into play to how you would stop on pucks like that?
No, we just
hard, right?
We just try to run drills that simulate game situations.
Yeah.
And within the context of those drills, all types of situations develop in which your habits and your details come to the forefront. Another one would be playing defensively with your stick on the ice and not in the air. I think it's an often overlooked one that leads to a lot of tick pucks. But also, like, those things, there's ice habits too. There's I think curiosity is a habit. I'll be really honest with you. I think it's I think to be a quality Bentley student athlete, you have to lead with curiosity. I think you have to have a learning mindset. I think you have to be a curious teammate to learn about each other. We have to have a tight room to compete against some of the teams in our region. And we've been able to do that in the past couple of years. But I think curiosity and just the ability to think, I'll be honest with you, another concept is just to think, understand that the world does not revolve around you. I think those are some things that are some bigger concepts, and I would also argue habits within our program that I think are foundational for us.
Yeah, okay. All right, we'll get back to your
Sure.
program in a minute. I just want to get to know who Andy was. The big joke was I couldn't figure out where you played high school hockey. You're pre-internet. Everything is documented, but the first landing space is you playing college hockey at Amherst. But you grew up in Minnetonka. I'm guessing you played in the Minnetonka system and learned that you played for Tom Klein, TK,
Sure.
in high school. Talk a little bit about your hockey, and I know you played baseball at Amherst as well, so I'm sure you had some big willow moments and that as well, playing some baseball in the Minnetonka area.
Yeah, so Minnetonka youth hockey product. Kind of grew up 7 and 101 back in a neighborhood.
Right by Pagel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It used to be. Yeah, there wasn't originally an arena there,
Right.
But just in one of the neighborhoods back there. I think my form, like obviously my parents were extremely supportive in the pursuits, but I think the formative thing was the neighborhood that I grew up in had a park. Like, it was called Spring Hill Park.
Yeah.
And so all of my activities, I think it's a big part of my story. All of my activities revolved around Spring Hill Park. So I'd come home from school every day. I would put my stuff down. I'd walk to the park. I'd put on my skates during the winter.
Yep.
I'd skate. My mom would call the warming house, say, send Andy home. I'd walk home. I'd have dinner. I'd walk back to the arena into the outdoor rink until the place shut down.
Yeah.
And then my mom would come pick me up, or my dad would come pick me up. And so that was the winter time. But the park also served as like where I played soccer and where I grew up playing baseball. And without that, basically that holds a special place in my heart. And that was Minnetonka School District. So I played Minnetonka youth hockey all growing up, and with some wonderful teammates and some wonderful families and some wonderful coaches, and that parlayed into playing hockey and baseball at Minnetonka High School.
So we talked about Tom Klein, but were there any youth coaches, whether they were baseball or hockey coaches, that you go, oh, that guy really pressed the joy. I got a lot of joy out of playing for him, right? I really enjoyed it. Or maybe it was just learning it at the park and the coaches were secondary.
Yeah, I mean, I would certainly lead with the park because that sort of unstructured play, and that is, as you know, that's missing today.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to have that. So I think a lot of sense develops and decision making develop in those unstructured types of situations, and so that's something that I was fortunate to have. But in youth hockey, we had a lot of parents that were coaches. Joe Urich, Jack Pagel were some that come to mind. I think Tom Klein was a wonderful high school hockey coach. At high school baseball, Mark Lunch McKenzie was our coach.
Yeah.
He left there eventually and became a really, really prominent coach at Concordia.
Yeah.
I would say he really resonated with me. His ability to teach lessons outside of baseball. I always thought I might want to be an educator, but I think he would just sit us down and just talk to us. I think he liked hearing himself talk, but he would just and he would weave in important threads and details, and his style really resonated with me. And then from there, I've taken things from other coaches along the way. But if you're going to talk about the youth and the high school situations, his style resonated with me. The baseball program was extremely strong when I was there.
I coached a lot of youth football, baseball, hockey, and when I was coaching football, I had this coach, Al Frost was his name. He played football at Iowa State, and whenever we started practice, he'd say, okay, fellas, put your bonnets on. And fast forward like 20 some years, I was coaching, and first thing I said was, all right, time to put your bonnets on. And the kids are sitting like, what is your bonnet? What is that all about? But like, do you ever have like you're saying something, you're teaching something, you have a lunch moment, or you have a moment where like, man, gosh, I've become my high school coach or my college coach, or you know what I mean, where you've emulated something and you didn't even realize it until it came out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I one of my best mentors in life is Jack Arena, just retiring from Amherst College after 40 plus years of coaching there. Best family coach I've ever been around. And I've had moments in the past 22 years of doing this where I've thought about him. But then I've also had, other really good mentors since then. And I've always tried to, as this thing has started at Bentley, I've tried to do it my own way, with my own beliefs. But there have been times where I've been like, I think this might be what he was talking about, or I think this, I'm starting to sound like him a little bit, and sometimes that's a good thing, and then sometimes that's maybe not so good of a
Right.
thing. Yeah.
Same with me. It just happened. I was like, what
Yeah.
just happened to me? So,
Sure.
all right. So you graduate high school. Did you guys have, how were the skippers in the mid 90s? I don't even really know. Did you guys have any success? Did you make it to state?
Yeah, we had some tremendous teams. Our youth, the cohort we were in for youth hockey was,
Yeah.
we were in the top 5 in the state every year, and the same thing parlayed into high school. So we made one state tournament. My senior year when we did not, I was one of the captains of the team, and we got upset in the semifinals, and that was our best team. But
Right.
sometimes that happens.
Always
right?
happens that way.
So I had an opportunity to play in the tournament as a sophomore, and then the next 2 years we might have been better, but we just didn't make it.
Right. Was that Civic Center or was that Target Center?
Civic Center.
Civic Center. Yeah, because it was right around that late 90s. It kind of switched over to Target Center.
Yeah.
Okay. You went on to college. How did you pick Amherst? And was that something that, because that's not a typical Minnesotan route. And how did that transpire?
Yeah, I mean, I was a curious student. I performed, I did well in school, and
Well, you have to get in Amherst, right?
Yeah, sure. My mom was an educator, a teacher at a private school in Minnesota. I was public school the whole time, so I was kind of interested in attending an Ivy League institution. I didn't really know what I didn't know, but somewhere along the way, there's an alumni group in there's a group of alums of Amherst alums in Minneapolis. Yeah. And one gentleman by the name of Steve Flom reached out to me, and he's the one who really got me kind of like started in the process of learning about Amherst.
Yeah.
And then the hockey coach came in, and then the baseball coach came in, and but I wasn't overly worldly. Like the like 99.9% of Minnesotans.
Correct.
Right?
Thank you.
I was not overly worldly, and so I was hesitant. But finally, there's some important people in my life. I think my mom weighed in. But there's some people who kind of weighed in. I was very, very focused on sports. And they kind of were basically like, hey, it sounds like you might have a shot to get in there and go there. And you don't know this, but this is not something you can pass up. And they were right. It was a life-changing decision for me. Arguably the best 4 years of my life. This past weekend, I was just back there on a call for a reunion. I met my wife there. I started my coaching career there. I got 2 degrees there, and all of this whole process began there.
You said I was creeping on you a little bit, and I noticed you got an MBA while you were coaching there.
Sure.
Were you thinking, was that kind of a backup to coaching, or like just in case the coaching thing didn't work out, maybe you go work on Wall Street, or how did that? I was like, this guy's not dumb. He had this thing figured out. He had a good plan B going.
Yeah, a little bit of both. So really? When I finished at Amherst, I was going to go play professionally at a lower level in Europe for 1 or 2 years for an experience. But I was fortunate enough to win a fellowship at Amherst, a really prestigious teaching and coaching fellowship.
Oh, okay.
That for 2 years, and you had an opportunity to coach 3 sports, 3 seasons. So I coached women's soccer and hockey and baseball, which I played, and I played soccer all through high school as well. And so that was a really formative experience because I was there full time, and I got in really a 10-month window each year. I got a window into like 3 different coaches' worlds in 3 different seasons, and
3
in those
types of athletes too. Right?
Bingo. So in those first 2 seasons, the recruiting component was a little bit less at that time, but I was immersed in all the day-to-day, and it was really, really a good experience. And from there, I kind of knew it grew my passion for teaching, which is what I always thought I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But
just like your mom.
Yeah, just like my mom. And my dad grew up on a farm in South Dakota, and he went to South Dakota State, and he was an engineer. And so, there's a big part of my personality that's his too. But I think that 2-year experience at Amherst was great. I parlayed that from there. I went to grad school at UMass. And I kept coaching. I went to grad school to get an MBA for 2 years. I kept coaching full time.
Right.
And when I was done with those 4 or 5 years, basically what I said to myself was, all my undergraduate friends Amherst friends are already really successful and making a lot of money.
Yep.
All the business school friends I just made they're all going off to good jobs.
Yep.
Perhaps you owe it to yourself to at least attempt to make some money instead of being a poor coach forever. So I moved back to Minneapolis and got a job at Target Corporate.
Yeah.
And I did that so I just got out of coaching.
Yep.
after 5 years, and I didn't. That's a lot. This is part of the story that a lot of people don't know. And I just dove in head first, and what a wonderful experience. Like, obviously, tremendous corporation, but I learned what I learned in 18, 19 months being outside of the hockey world, how to run a meeting,
Yeah.
how to, as you moved along from position to position, how to leave a position, how to mentor the next person that's coming into your position, like really important business related topics
Yeah.
that I think a lot of people that never leave the world of hockey don't get experience to, or aren't, they aren't shown unless they have elite mentors. So I wouldn't trade that. And in that time, there was a few people that reached out, about hockey things, not job offers, but I just decided this is the path I was going to go down. But with the 18-month mark, a St. Paul native, Kevin Hartzell, reached out. And so
he's on my list.
Yeah,
he's
so
on
he
my
was.
list.
So Hartsey was.
How did you know Kevin Hartzell?
I didn't until that time.
How did he know you were working at Target Corporation?
Well, Kevin had a similar story to me.
Yeah.
That's not the correct way of saying it. I had a similar story to his.
Yeah.
His is much more prominent. So I think maybe my time outside of the hockey kind of resonated with him because, he got ingrained in the Hubbard Corporation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Organization, and that obviously through the Vulcans. But then they transitioned him as he was raising his family into a national sales job.
Correct.
And he did that for 15 years for KSTP, and that's how he really got tight with Stan Hubbard, so on and so forth. And so I think that resonated with him. He was looking for someone, and he said, okay. He just said, just do me a favor, come down to Sioux Falls for a weekend. I turned it into 3 days, and we'll just hang out together. And he's like, no pressure. He's like, I respect what you're doing. But I've also heard certain things, and I think this, could be a fit. So I said, okay. I drove down, and 3 days later, I drove.
And they weren't playing at the Sanford Center then. I mean, this was the
No,
old
no,
Sioux
no.
Falls
This is,
Stampede.
This is
Right.
this is not a hockey arena. This is a building in which we played hockey.
Correct,
So the town
But
was
just-
the
because
town.
the way it is now
Yeah,
is like
yeah.
kind of like this place compared to your original rink. right?
Bingo, yeah. So the town was still elite. It's
Oh,
arguably
yeah.
the favorite. Outside of Minnesota, it's the favorite place I've ever lived, and it's a place I would go back to in a heartbeat. I love Sioux Falls, but so Kevin, I got done with the 3 days, drove back to Minnesota, sat down with my parents, and said, hey, I'm going to take a 70% pay cut and get back into the coaching world. And they said, okay, great, we support you. So I went down. That turned into 5 years, which turned into 5 years after that. My relationship with Kevin was so formative that 5 years after that, after I left, I had a 25-person wedding at Amherst College on the hill, and he officiated it.
Really?
So we're tight to this day.
So when did you get married in relation to this? Because like you said, you obviously weren't dating or married at the time, because no woman in their right mind would go, yeah, let's take the 70% pay cut. Did she come in after, your wife come in after that?
Yeah, for sure. So we're both Amherst College grads, 5 years apart, and I had gotten at the end of my time in Sioux Falls, I went back to, I just referenced a reunion.
Yeah.
I went back to a reunion. She was there as well. We had known each other.
So these reunions like all school reunions?
5-year segments.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh,
God,
so every 5 years comes on this cycle, and then so every 5 years you go. And she was there, and we had known each other a little bit, but we reconnected.
Yeah.
We started dating each other. At the time, she was working in Brooklyn. I was coaching in Sioux Falls. So we did that a little bit. I eventually left when there was a little bit of an ownership change in Sioux Falls.
Yep.
I transitioned to Clarkson. And my wife's Tracy, and we were kind of excited that we were going to be living in the same state.
Yeah.
But Clarkson is on the Canadian border.
Quite a ways away
And
from
Brooklyn. She was in Brooklyn.
Close enough, right?
After a couple long distance visits, I remember her looking at me and saying,
Can't wait to hear this.
just so you know, when I came to visit you in Sioux Falls, it took me less time than it took me to go from Brooklyn. She would take
it'd be like a 2-hour flight.
Yeah, she would take the taxi to the train station. Or to the T to the train station to Albany, a puddle jumper from Albany to Ogdensburg, and then we'd spend a couple days together. So it is a funny story. But then I spent 4 wonderful years at Clarkson. The head coach at the time, it was a brand new staff, just like this was.
Yeah.
So it was Casey, Phil Waugh, and myself, and Casey's the first guy at the Division I level that ever gave me a chance. And I'm forever indebted to him for that. I don't know if I was fully ready for that, but he gave me a chance. And
this was his first head coaching job too,
he had
right?
done, he had been
a lifelong assistant, right?
Like an elite one.
Yeah.
Like he was a integral part of the, Cornell originally, integral part of turning Ohio State into a real big time.
Yeah.
And so like he had put in the work, and then Clarkson was his first chance, kind of like this is my first chance. And I don't know why he added me to the staff, but he did. And so that was a wonderful experience. As we were looking to get married and start a family, at the time her parents were still in Connecticut. Tracy's from Connecticut. I think we wanted to get maybe a little bit closer to her. So, Lowell became an opportunity. And I had coached like 3 players, believe it or not, from Sioux Falls that had gone there.
Yeah.
And they had spoken really high.
A train track between Lowell and Sioux Falls.
Yeah, and it became really like, I had talked about those guys all said they were getting better there, and that resonated with me. The fact, not that it was UMass Lowell or this conference, none of that mattered to me, but the fact that they had enjoyed in their experience and they thought they were getting better, it always resonated with me. And then when the opportunity came, we went for it.
And Boston is kind of home now, right? Here's a weird, random question.
Yeah.
Did you move homes when you left Lowell and came here?
When I left Lowell and came here, no.
No, you'd be the same house, right?
Yeah. People have asked me that. Our family lives in Nashua, New Hampshire.
Yeah, okay.
Which is about 40 minutes north of here. It takes me 40 minutes to get here in the morning, and it was like a 25-minute commute to Lowell.
Yeah.
And I had never even really processed this job or thought about it. I just assumed any opportunity was going to require a move.
Correct.
The opportunity arose and started to pursue it, and it became apparent that it was already so late in the summer we were not moving.
Right.
We just couldn't hire a full staff and
Do
transition
the
whole thing in 6 weeks and bring 5 new players in and move. So we stayed there, but we really liked the neighborhood there.
She still stayed.
We still stayed
So
there.
how long of a commute is it from New Hampshire to here?
It's like 40 minutes for me in the morning. Yeah.
All right.
So in the afternoon, if I scoot out early enough, it's good.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I get caught in a bit.
Yeah, you get stuck. You get stuck. So when you were, at what point in your life, probably was when you were working at Target, we were like, okay, I can see myself becoming a Division I men's ice hockey coach. Did you ever have that as a goal?
No.
Or was it just kind of, just keep going and good things will happen?
Yeah, I mean, I told you I dove in pretty hard to the Target situation.
Right.
I wanted to try to see if I didn't really think I was going to fit into a corporate environment, but I wanted to see if I could.
Right.
And it was great. I knew that type of environment wasn't going to be for me long term, but I thought maybe a small business environment could be. I learned a lot in the MBA program, and so what happened there was, I'm losing my train of thought there. So what happened was, I never had a vision of being a Division I coach. When I decided to leave Target, really it was Kevin's view of the world.
Yeah.
It was his the two of us call it like the why you get out of the bed in the morning.
Yeah.
I think we shared that. That's why we connected. Like our answer to that question is similar. I think that's like a foundational question for success in life. And so we just connected, and it was a different level. I enjoyed the quality of player in the USHL, but I wasn't enamored by it. So even then I wasn't like, the only thing that appealed to me about Division I at that time was it was one of the few things I hadn't tried.
Right.
And I had kind of thought to myself, I think maybe I should just try a bunch of levels and figure out which one I like the most.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I went that direction. I'm still not enamored by the level.
Really?
I think it's a wonderful opportunity, but I like the fact that I'm at a wonderful university that's on the rise in every way, shape, or form.
Everything,
and
yeah.
I think one of the things I was really really learned in my time with Sioux Falls, with Kevin and the folks there, is just that the titles, that stuff doesn't, it's who you're going through these things with.
Yeah.
And so this Bentley thing, it's where I want to stay for a long time, but not because it's Division One. It's because of the people that are here, and I think we can build something really cool.
I think there's also, like, especially when you're an AHA school like you guys, like, there's a challenge. Every day you roll out of bed, there's going to be a new challenge.
Sure.
And I think challenges are something that you probably enjoy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no offense, if you're Bob Motzko at the University of Minnesota, you just roll out of bed and pick your 6 players and then you go back to bed. It's where you guys, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, with due respect for Bob and what they do, I think it's probably a little bit more nuanced than that, but I know what you're saying. But I think it's a different type of recruiting there. I think they're turning more people away.
Yes.
It's a different challenge that they have, and they do a wonderful job with it. They're the last bunch of years, they've been off the charts good. So at the same time, maybe my formative years have, I've never been at a blue blood school. And so I've never.
As far as athletics, because Amherst is a blue blood school academically.
Athletically.
Yeah.
I think you just figure out different ways to try to stay in the battle. And I think, I've probably developed mostly through my time at Lowell. I relish being the underdog. I enjoy it.
Especially in Hockey East, right?
Yeah, and so it's fun, and you don't have maybe the same resources or the same historical perspective, but hockey's still a sport where you can succeed as the underdog, and I think that's we've kind of woven that into the ethos of what we're trying to do here.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Bentley
Yeah.
and your vision. Now you've had 2 years. Your first year actually did pretty well, considering when, like you said, you were brand new. Everything was kind of coming. It was probably going really fast for you as a head coach. And then now, after your second year, obviously you had a great second year. You have a trophy to your right to prove it. Day one, when you got the job, and to where you are today, and where do you think you would have gotten the program going as fast as you are after 2 years? Did you think you could get it going this fast?
With relation to the championship, no.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes those things can like mask where you are on the ascent or the build. Does that make sense?
A little bit, yeah.
Kind of like a really good player can, or something like that. But the university has played a big role. A university cannot make a coaching change and just assume they're changing the person in the chair and everything's going to change. It doesn't work that way. Our leadership, led by Vaughn Williams, is tremendous. They've been extremely supportive, and I asked a lot of probing questions in the process, and about what they wanted this to be, and I really enjoyed the answers. So I think this can be a shining light on campus and a shining light in our region. And I'm really enjoying the process of working with a group of people to get it there. I think you are right. Man, was that fast. But I'm not so sure.
On the treadmill going like 10. Now you're on the treadmill going 10. It doesn't seem as fast, correct?
Bingo. But I think the other thing, like in year one, this didn't happen in April or May. It was late.
Yeah.
And so it was never came up for air. But man, was it fun. I'm almost more proud of year one than this past year, because we add a few players and pick an unbelievable staff. I'm so proud of those guys. And
your whole staff in year one is back for year two, and you're for year three.
Correct. Yeah.
No turnover.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
that's gonna be fun for them too.
I think so. I think they're having a good time.
Right. Well, the guys that I talked to sure seem like they're very jacked about being here.
Well, I think they see a lot of change. I think they're enjoying being part of an ascent, right?
Yeah.
And, I want to be careful, and I don't think an ascent in college athletics is always reflected by the record.
Right.
I think it's partially reflected by the record, but it's not always like a straight linear thing, right?
Correct.
But going back to year one, it was a blast. We were picked to finish, I say 12th in an 11-team league. And rightfully so. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew who the players were, and but they overlooked a lot of the players on the team because there were some darn good ones.
Yeah.
And but I think the fact that we finished a point out of first round bye in the playoffs in year one, and I think a little bit of that was lost because we lost an opening round playoff game at home.
Right.
And people just tend to kind of fixate on the last thing you did in this world.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm well aware.
But at the same time, like, man, was that year fun, and it made me more appreciative of my mentors because I always thought that when I had my chance, I would be ready. And the first year, the experience, like it validated for that. And man, I made a ton of mistakes, but it validated for me that I was ready to like be a leader. And then parlay that into year two, we had our whole leadership group internally on the team stayed intact, and they came back, and we had some wonderful moments this past year.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I don't hate to dwell on one period of hockey, but when you rolled into the first, you roll into the arena for the NCAA tournament, you had to have just a little bit of stargazing, like not let's like get to BC, but just in general, like okay, you're getting the credentials, your team's doing like this is different than the AHA conference tournament. This is the real deal. This is what everybody laces them up for. What's going through your brain and the team's brain and the coaching staff's brain? Like, okay, or is this just like, hey, this is the greatest opportunity ever because we get to play BC in that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a mixture. I mean, like, like a lot of conference tournaments, our championship game at Holy Cross was the highlight of the season, not the regional game. Like the atmosphere there, it's a small building. They did a wonderful job with the event, but like that, we couldn't top that atmosphere. And a lot of teams will tell you that, like, having spent some time in Hockey East, when you leave the Garden and go to the NCAA tournament,
it's almost a letdown.
You're not topping the atmosphere. The games become important because you're trying to advance, but you don't top that experience. So what happens is, I knew we weren't going to top that. I think for me personally, that I played BC like 25 times. And I've been to a bunch of regionals, also in Manchester.
Intimidated from being.
We've gone to a regional in Manchester.
It's
also 15 minutes from our house. So like it's that thing was not new to me. I think it was for a lot of the guys, and I think as ready as we were, it showed in period one. I think a lot of what people don't talk about in the game is that I knew the game had to follow a certain script. I've competed against those guys a lot. And a part of the script was it had to be close after the first 10 minutes, and it was. BC is an unreal program, but they can storm the castle with the best of them. And so we had some big saves, and we had some luck on our side in the first 10, and somehow we got out of the first down 1-0 because we did not play well. Now, our opponent was elite, but that was not a good version of our team. And I knew once we got out of that some of the nerves would subside, and they did. And we gradually worked ourselves into the game.
I was talking to Garrett Horsager on Sunday, and he was talking about exactly what you're talking about. We knew what the script was, and we knew if we could get BC to play along on our script, we knew we had a chance. And I go, what was that? And he goes, well, they just decided, they started to play a very perimeter game, and we were happy to allow them to play all they wanted. And he kind of went through what the script was, and he goes, and we were this close.
I mean, I think you have to paint a picture for the guys that that build some belief, right? And you keep referencing BC, but you have to remember in these 2 years, every single time we've played a Hockey East opponent, we've won a couple of them, but we've outplayed them or been in the game. And early in the season, we went to Maine. Maine was dynamite this year, really good. And they ended up winning the Hockey East tournament. And we played them at a neutral site in Portland. The year before, we played them at a neutral site in Portland, and we played really well, lost 3-2. And we were fortunate enough to be granted the same opportunity this year, and that was a big game for us. And that's the first time. It was a different type of game because we got outplayed in that game. And a lot of these games against Hockey East opponents, we had been outplaying opponents and been losing. That was just part of like what we did.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but the main game, they outplayed us for large portions of the game, and we found a way to win. That was a big. I think it gave our guys even more confidence. We knew we could play in all those games, but the win was big. It was
Yeah.
against like one of the best teams in the region. One of the best teams in the country. And so that was a big moment for us. And so I think the stage was bigger, but like the level of competition, no disrespect. Obviously, they were a top 3 team in the country this year too. We knew we belonged on the ice. Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing
Yeah.
is for the belief, right?
Sure.
And what does that do for your program moving forward? I'm sure now our players taking notice. Is recruiting easier in year 3 than it was in year 1?
Yeah, I think it'll help us long term. A lot of the recruiting for this coming year is done at that point. I think it'll help us long term. I think it's going to help the university. I think we're the only Division I team on campus, so they're trying to use this for some national recognition. I think that's going to help. It's not going to hurt us. Let's call a spade a spade. I think. I think internally, part of our challenge, and I know we'll do well with this, is just keeping the focus on what actually matters, which is bringing the conversation a little bit full circle, is the foundational elements, the habits and the details. How professional are we about our days? And some of this other stuff has to, I don't think this can be your focus. These results have to be a product of a process that you adhere to on a daily basis.
Right. Talk about the type of student athlete is the student athlete you? Are you the student athlete?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A guy who is really athletic, who loved the game, was a thinker. You have the curiosity.
Sure.
I can see that. Like, and I'm not saying let's go recruit 20 Andes, but
we don't want to do that.
What's the type of athlete that you guys are looking for? I know I don't want to get into regions because I'd love to talk about how many great Minnesota kids we have, but talk about the type of kid that you're looking for.
It's a great question. I enjoy this one. I'm going to lead with curiosity. Like I just think this place has a lot to offer, like the university does. And so I think, this year we had the highest GPA of any team on campus. Like our guys are.
That's impressive.
Like it's it's off the charts impressive. And we're talking about any team, any women's team. And so that's not a directive from the staff. That's us just reinforcing on a regular basis, like how important their pursuit is. And any academic pursuit, you have to lead with curiosity, because if you think you know it all on a college campus, you're wrong, right?
Amen to that.
And so
I
just think the way we usually answer this is we're looking for curious, switched on guys that are good at getting better. So curious, switched on guys that are good at getting better, that want to be really good teammates. I think if those ingredients are a part of a person, or a young person, I should say, we can work with that. And I think we can take that type of mindset. That type of mindset is what allows someone to thrive as a teammate, which you have to do here to be successful. And it allows them to thrive as someone who wants to pursue their academic and their athletic pursuits for as long as possible. We have to be a program, going back to the ice, where guys get better. In 2 years here, I've witnessed guys get better. The coaches do not do that. They lay out a framework, and they help with that.
Yeah.
But within those elements that we mentioned, we're also trying to encourage the guys that they have to be their own best coach, because when they're eventually done with hockey, people aren't just going to keep coming to them with what do you need, how can I help you? You have to advocate for yourself. And part of the ways our guys they set up their own video sessions. They set up their own cadence for the week when they need help in free time. And we have a young staff that will never leave the ice until the last guy leaves. And that resonates with the guys. But at the same time, it's driven by them. And I always want to make sure that whenever I have a chance to talk about our program, I understand you're asking a lot of questions about my past, and that's fine. Yeah. But the guys drive this. Their curiosity and their desire to be good teammates and to be better versions of themselves, this drives this and will drive it going forward.
Talk about the education. Talking to one of your assistant coaches, just said, hey, well, what does it cost? I walked the campus last night
Yeah.
and kind of walked around and just saw how beautiful it was. And I said, well, what does it cost to go to school here? And he's like, $85,000. I was like, oh, wow. So if I'm a scholarship athlete, potentially full scholarship athlete here, I'm getting a $300,000+ education. Talk a little bit about how attractive that is to some of the players, especially ones that you're talking about, the ones that are really academic driven, curious, and they want to learn, they want to be high performers.
I mean, I think it's extremely attractive. I mean, if I went back, it would have been attracted to me,
Correct.
right? You know what I mean? And so the price tag is the price tag. You know, like it's like most universities, not many individuals pay that, right? That's,
Correct. No, but
But at the same time, I think it does speak to the robustness of the offerings from the university, like what they're exposed to academically is not stagnating at a time when universities are in a look.
Yes.
It is growing. The residential experience is growing and it's being enhanced all the time. And as someone who spent a lot of time in college on a college campus, I can see that. I can see when it's not happening, and it's going like this here. And so I think, the price tag, like I said, is the price tag. But I think the holistic experience of what a learner could gain from an environment like this. And let's not mistake, we have 7 guys leaving the program this past year that are going to be playing pro hockey next year.
Right.
So they want to keep playing, and they will keep playing at high levels. But I think they're also a little bit more mature about the fact that their pro careers are going to be 1 to 2 to 4 to 8 to 10 years. And what this place does, as well as any place, is it sets them up for when that is done. Because the people they meet, the alumni they're associated with, and the environment with which they have to learn is really, it's a really enriching environment.
So we talked a bit about the academics. Now let's talk about the athletics. You know, you mentioned already one thing about you players that want to improve. You've seen the improvement in 2 years, and you talked. I want to go back to about you said something really quick and kind of you went really fast and talk about we have young coaches that won't leave the ice until they'll be the last people on the ice because they'll want to work. If a player wants to work an extra 30 minutes on shooting or skating or something, you have coaches there that will be beside them the entire 4 years while they're here. Talk a little bit about that. I think it's important to realize that this isn't Minnetonka youth hockey where the practice gets over at 6:15 and your mom's picking you up. You can stay. You can stay longer. You can be as good a player as you could ever want here.
I mean, we are blessed with the fact that we don't have ice time pressure here.
Right.
You know, so we practice in the morning. Our schedule is unbelievable. The guys may or may not take a class in the morning, like at 8 a.m., but then they come here and they just have a big chunk of their day dedicated to this pursuit, in which they don't have classes. And then they finish their classes in the afternoon and evening when we're done here. But our practices are intense and short, and they're never long. So our free time is probably at a level that they've never experienced. And free time has to be successful. Think of it like, in maybe like in a farming analogy or even an academic analogy, there has to be a combination of like structured free time where the coach is like, hey, we need to work on taking pucks off the wall. This is not a skill we're good at. Defensemen need to have more reps like handling hard rims. Like we'll lead those things, but we also have to what we're getting them to do. We also have guys coming to us during free time that are saying like, I'll do this drill, but then Tuesdays is my day where I'm shooting 150 in these different forms, and they'll say I need passes from here, here, and here. And one of the things I'm so proud about our staff about is they just never tire. Like they'll just do it and do it and do it and do it. And I made it clear that was an expectation of our staff because
Right.
I wanted to make sure that the player development piece was never overlooked. But it's one thing to make mention of it and to make sure it's an emphasis, but the guys are doing it. You know what I mean? And so we had a graduating senior in an exit interview this year who I've known for a long time, and he made mention of the fact he's just like, maybe one of my favorite parts about Bentley has just been the free time. He's like, there'd be times where there'd just be 1 or 2 of us left and there'd still be 2 or 3 coaches on the ice. And so he's like, I always knew that if if there were days where I wanted to do something in a corner by myself, I could do it. And if there were days where I needed help, like with this type of pattern or this type of pass or like shots for this type of deflection, it was never not going to be there. And that's easier said than done in a world where recruiting recruiting carries the day.
Yeah.
Like it's the foundation of everything. But I think the fact that our staff is young and energized, they can go, they can get back, they can do their thing, but they always have energy for practice.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, if you think about it, if you're they're staying along for free time, it's hard to get out and beat the bushes and find top players to come in and replace them.
Yeah, and we have a plan that we adhere to there, and that'll never be overlooked, right? And not every one of us is here every day, but like we're here in volume every day for practice, and that's important to me.
You said something there a minute ago. I want to dive in a little bit more. Our practices are short and they're intense. Tell me what practice looks like at Bentley.
It's going to depend a little bit on the time of year and the time of the week, right? In colleges, the cadence for the games is pretty much the same, right? It's a build up, and so
it's probably dictated by the date of the game too.
No question.
Right? Like, are you guys all Friday, Saturday games? Because the Hockey East has got some crazy midweek type of games as well.
I'd say we're about 85% Friday, Saturday. Okay. So that's the normal cadence, and then you just structure your week accordingly. I mean, I think we have data and numbers on our guys that dictate like how we should structure a week, right? And like in terms of how they're recovering, what some stresses are they might be facing and like we have ways of measuring those things.
And this is through your athletic trainer, correct?
Yeah, the performance side of the house. And so like that side for them is definitely taken care of. And we have measurables that tell us they're off, they're tired, and this is not unique to us. A lot of institutions have these types of things. But we're just like a lot of what we do in practice is like it's very game specific. I think there are portions of the week that we won't do any like structured systematic drills, and they're all focused on skill development. A lot of times Mondays are that for us.
Yeah.
But then with our free time, we find ways to hit on the skill development piece 4 times a week. But when we do practice as a team, I just think the way we play requires a lot of energy, and I don't want to leave it in practice. So,
all right, let's talk. I want to do one topic with you, and this is the CHL and how that's going to affect all of college hockey. Mm-hmm. You're starting to see it on the high end with players leaving the OHL. Just recently with the OHL season ending, it feels like OHL more so than the WHL and the Q. Some really, really high-end players coming in some high-end institutions, why would we be bringing that up with Bentley? Because what will happen is some more players are going to start to filter their way down to a school that is fighting for maybe the mid-range player. Tell me a little bit about that effect, and have you seen any change since the September ruling, or do you feel like you're still on driving the same plow as you were 2 years ago?
Well, one thing I'm going to caution you on, perhaps the mid-range player in the recruiting process, but they're going to get better. And so like they don't have to stay in that realm, and people develop at all different times. And I think at the end of the day, it's just a new player pool. There are wonderful leagues up there. If anybody really tells you they know exactly how this is going to unfold for the next 2 to 5 years,
don't. No one
they
does.
don't. I think
it's going to be really interesting. Don't you think?
I think we're all just guessing, and we're, I should say, educatedly guessing.
Yes.
But for every action, there's a reaction in life, and this action has caused a lot of, as if our world could have more disruption or upheaval at the moment. It actually has caused more disruption and upheaval. I think for us on the recruiting front, we have a couple of CHL players coming to us next season, but not because they come from the CHL. They were good fits for us.
Yeah.
And not everybody that comes from the CHL is, quote, not going to be interested in academics or be curious in that on that side of the house.
That's a misnomer, right?
It's a whole new world for those guys too.
Yeah.
Maybe they had to pursue that path at 16 and were forced to because they had to make a choice at that fork in the road at 16. But now the opportunity to go to Bentley or to another school is like really appealing to them.
Yeah.
Because they need more time to develop hockey wise than their age out year, and they also have a chance to get a 4-year degree. How has it changed for us? We're still looking for the same type of like person.
Player, yeah.
But we've had to go to a few different places. But we've always gone to a few different places, and so I think it'll force us to continue to be active and to go to a few different places. But I think the addition to the player pool will eventually shake out. I think you'll see initially the number that ends up starting in college hockey this year from the CHL, I think will be the peak. And then it'll gradually, decrease from there is my take. I don't know that to be the case.
Don't know, but I think so too.
But I think it'll slowly level off, and in 2 or 3 years we'll be talking and we'll know what the real impact of these players. I don't think any of us wonder what the impact of the top, 1% of those players will be. But I don't think any of us wonder what the top 1% do in college hockey either. Before this happened, they come in and they may have a huge impact. But there's a lot of other players in college hockey too that are, really pushing a lot of programs forward, and they're going to remain just as important as they always have.
One of the things that I said, the player pool is bigger,
Yeah.
but to choose from, but the amount of schools has remained the same. So I think it's going to be good for college hockey, the quality of play, and I think the teams. I think the teams, like you said, I think some of the bottom teams are going to really, really benefit from those. And I've always compared you guys, speaking of Sioux Falls, to Augustana, where you have a brand new rink, a really, really, really supportive university, and I think you're going to have a lot of success.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I think that's our expectation too. We'll measure success internally, how we measure it, but I think at the same time, we mentioned the disruption, we mentioned what is basically chaos, but within all that, there's opportunity, and that's how we look at it. I think this is just another unique opportunity for a different, opening up a different player pool. And we have not wasted a lot of time sitting around complaining about the situation.
Yeah.
We're finding ways to try to be successful within the situation. And I do think that some of my experiences in the past have really, and I've had some mentors in the past that have really helped shape that. If you aren't coaching at a blue blood school, you just have to find other ways, and it can be done. But I think there are ways to go about those pursuits, and we'll have to stick to some of those fundamentals.
All right, educate me on the AHA. I've learned a little bit. Talk to your assistants. You have some long bus trips, to Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You get to go play against Frank in Air Force. What's it been like? You said you were kind of a Hockey East guy.
Sure.
Forever, right? So now you're in the AHA. Talk to me what your learning curve has been with the AHA, and what are some things about the league that make it attractive to play in?
One of the things that's been enjoyable for me is just learning the different styles that teams play. I thought I could maybe look from afar and try to identify like an identity here or there. What I thought, I was half right and half wrong.
Yep.
But I think it's been really fun for me to learn about like identities of certain programs. If you're going to mention Frank, we've had some great battles with them, but I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I know what it's going to look like.
The script looks like
for 120 or probably 130 minutes when we do have those weekends against them, and I have the utmost respect for the career and what he's done, and the service on so many levels. That's a different type of job, and he's sacrificed for that, and I think the program is so respected.
Those schools can't, Army and
they don't have
even take them.
They don't have many like things in this changing landscape that are actually helping
benefit.
them.
No benefit whatsoever.
But they have some pretty cool things about those institutions. So yeah, for sure. And so I think there's no other conference that has the service academy, so that's what makes it unique. Going to Air Force.
Are those two hard places to play? Do they bring a lot of fans, students there that just make it loud.
Well, Air Force is challenging because it's Air Force, but it's also at altitude.
Correct.
Nobody does that on a regular basis except them in Colorado College, right?
I just coached in Denver a couple weeks ago with 11, 12-year-old girls, and 4 days, I mean, they were awesome.
Yeah.
The 5th day, for some reason, it was spaghetti legs the whole game. I was like, what is wrong with you? And they're just these cute
perhaps
girls.
it was because it was the 5th day.
It was the 5th day. Oh, it was the altitude.
A lot of hockey.
It was a lot of altitude. It was bad. But yeah, I now know what it's like to coach in altitude. It's something else.
But they make it hard. Army, West Point makes it hard. And that trip is I went there on a visit, as a perspective. And I was blown. Like the campus is something. Yeah. It takes the right type of person to want to go there. But another Minnesota guy runs that program now, and he's going to do a great job. He's going to do a great job. He's
pretty amazing how many Minnesota D1 coaches there are. You could make Dartmouth too. So it's like it just kind of keeps going.
Yeah, he's doing an amazing
killed
job
it there.
But Z's going to do a great job there. He's a super coach, and he's a better guy. He's a good mentor for young people, and he's watching their shoes too, right? So I think that's a big deal,
helps.
And
talk about a school where you couldn't not have an alum, right?
So I think that'll be pretty cool. That trip is good, but it's like our academic institutions way different in the league. It's spread out a little bit, and so. It's just been a blast for me. I did that other league for a while. It was fun, but I'm ready to see some different brands and some different challenges, and that's part that's been really fun for me. And like anybody that transitions to something different, it's better than people think it is. It's hard to score. It's extremely competitive. The parity is off the charts. The level of coaching in the league is really good, and so I think it's a league that's definitely on the rise.
That's fun. Okay. Last question, just a little bit more about you. You said you're married. You have kids, and how old are they? And how does it play a role? How is it with this job, which is basically feels I know we're in the off season now, but it feels like a 24/7 type of deal. How do you become a good father, a good husband as well? It's a tough package.
I'm just never going to forego an opportunity to reference some of my mentors.
Right.
Jack Arena, Kevin Hartzell, Casey Jones, Norm Bazin. I've witnessed all these guys raising families and coaching at different places.
Yeah.
But so what they don't realize, and what I probably don't realize now, is they served as an example for me as to how to do it. You just don't roll out of bed and have an understanding of how to do a job like this without having seen or having really good mentors. My mentors have been, off the charts good. And so, but I think you just have our girls. My wife is Tracy. She's a nature educator, so she teaches forest preschool in New Hampshire. Our girls are 5 and 7, Acadia and Maya. They've both gone through outdoor education. That's important to us, that pathway that she's leading.
That's cool.
And I think I'm really proud of her for that. I'm really proud of what she's doing and how she's exposed to our girls about the importance of nature and the outside world and how you can learn through it. I think they're really curious about those types of things.
Yeah.
But they always need more from you. So this schedule is really conducive. I get in early in the morning. I miss a little bit of the morning stuff, but I tend to get home earlier than we would if we practiced in the afternoon. So I do the best I can. And what happens is this time of year in the off-season cadence, if there's something that they're doing, I don't miss it.
Right.
Because you miss those things during the year. Season, and so there's a little bit of a sacrifice there. And that's where you have to have a supportive, spouse, and Tracy certainly is that. But they are really good. The 3 girls, I call it the girl team. They offer a lot of perspective for me. They're into everything that I wasn't interested in as a young person.
Having daughters, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so it's eye-opening for me, but it's also really good for me because I live in a world of athletics. And so it's good for me to see different things and to learn how to lead and try to be an example in different ways for them.
I was the king. My daughters are older. I was the king of the Polly Pockets, man. I had all that little store I set up for them. They couldn't buy things. It was. I know what you mean. It's definitely a different world versus the boy life that I grew up with.
Yeah, and I think I've really enjoyed the age. So like in some ways, our staff does a lion's share of the like on the road recruiting these days.
Right.
I still do, but not as much as I used to. And so in some ways, I maybe see them a little bit more than I did as an assistant in some different ways.
Yeah.
But I would also say that their decisions are heavier, pressures are different, and so you have to be careful not to bring that stuff home too.
Right. Here's an interesting question. So you have 2 daughters, 5 and 7. You don't work for Target Corporation or on Wall Street or in downtown Boston. You have a different job, a job of which I'm assuming they come to some home games, and they look around and there's 1,917 fans in the building, and they're all cheering for your team that their dad is leading, bright lights shining. It's got to be pretty cool. Like after the game coming out, like this is not you're not a normal dad in the neighborhood. Is what I'm saying. How do they? But at the same time, wait till they get older too. By the way, when you get home, they're going to keep you pretty much. They're going to keep you humble as well.
I love the question. I could probably talk about this
Good,
one
good.
for
I'm glad
a
you like it.
while.
Yeah.
In some ways, I think the beauty of their age now is they don't care.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
You're still dad, right?
They've in the past 2 years, they've asked more questions about how we did. When they don't come to the games, they watch them on TV, but they still don't really care. No. And so, like, I think that'll change in time. I think they started to care a little bit more the past couple of years as my role has changed, and they're into it a tiny bit more. But I'm talking about like not much. And so, to have a significant achievement at work, or to have an accomplishment in a day-to-day, in a like a part of a weekly cadence, and to go home and to not have them ask or care about it, I think is really healthy.
It's refreshing, I bet.
I think it's really like humbling. I think it's really grounding. And I think it's important for me because we get wrapped up in what we do. And the last thing I think I need is to go home and have them, it's one thing to be interested in it, but the fact that they, it doesn't define me for them, I think is really important. And so
maybe that 40-minute commute helps too, to kind of process some of that stuff. So by the time you get home, you can be present, right?
Yeah, mostly I just make calls on the commute. But I think the other thing I would say is like, it's a really good question. One I'll continue to think about because I think that can change in time too. They'll develop other interests, but I think like I'm going to go back to the mentors thing. I looked at what they did and how they raised their families, but I also think a lot about my dad and how he wasn't in the world of athletics. I have a sister. She lives in Chicago.
Older or younger?
Younger. Oh,
okay.
Excuse me, older.
Okay.
But he was, extremely civic minded. So he was always helping out with our teams. He had a sales job where he was flexible. He was always around. And I think that type of like guidance and what I saw from him is important to me too, because I miss some of those opportunities.
Right.
So I try to work extra hard to make sure the ones that I can be a part of, that I am a part of, because I know how formative it was for me.
Yeah, that's important. I had the same thing.
Yeah.
I had parents that were, I don't remember a ball game, soccer game, hockey game where I just remember left blue line every game.
Every game.
That's where they were. That was something you could just count on. So
it burns into your memory. You never forget that.
It does. It definitely does. Well, Andy, I've really enjoyed my time here at your school and your university, this beautiful facility that you get to coach in. You're lucky to be here. I'm lucky to spend some time with you today. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate the time for you and the podcast to come by, and we're really appreciative of it.
All right. Andy Jones, Bentley University.
You need to stay up out the streets if you can't take the heat. You need to stay up out the streets if you can't take the heat. Cause it get cold like Minnesota. Cold like Minnesota.